My name is Nezuko Okama. I'm a 17-year-old high school student. This time, I'd like to tell you about something that happened with my mother involving the wealth I inherited from my dad. It all began 10 years ago, when I was 7 years old and still in the 2nd grade. At the time, I lived with my father, Shinsuke, and my mother, Minako. My father was a real estate entrepreneur, so he owned a lot of properties which he would reform and furnish or prepare them for selling. He was so dedicated, he even ran his own refurbishment company. Thanks to my dad, we had our own estate in the middle of the city, but there was enough land surrounding it to give us plenty of privacy. I only recently found out just how large his wealth was, but I was always aware that we were rich. Because of his work, my dad was always busy, and he wasn't able to spend a lot of time with me. But he was very caring and always made an effort to play with me when he did have time, and didn't slack off when it came to teaching me what I should and shouldn't do. He was a wonderful father. On the other hand, it would be an understatement if I said that my mother was a bad parent. Even though she was, unlike my father, out of work and always at home, I had no good memories with her. Mom, look at this! I got full marks on my test today!
Shut up! Can't you see that I'm busy? I don't have time to deal with your stupid tests. Go tell Shinobu or your dad instead.
She was completely uninterested in me. She didn't care whether I got good grades or bad grades. She was only interested in herself and things that concerned her. Once, when I had nausea and collapsed at school, the nurse called home to have someone come and collect me, but even then she was cold.
I'm busy right now, so just let her rest in the nurse's office. She can come home when she feels better. Please don't waste my time with phone calls like this in the future.
She even scolded the nurse for calling her cell and didn't even try to pretend that she was worried about me. The nurse must have felt sorry for me because she lied about what my mom had said, covering it up by telling me my mom had been really worried about me but couldn't come straight away. But I had already heard everything. My mom's voice had been loud and clear, as though she wanted me to hear what she had said. I was already feeling depressed because I had been sick, but the loneliness just made it worse, and I was crying myself to sleep when the nurse left me to rest. By now, you must be wondering who was taking care of me if my dad was too busy, and my mother was so indifferent. Well, I was fortunate to have someone taking care of me when I was at home.
I'm going out to have dinner, so I'm leaving everything to you. Don't call me for anything stupid.
Understood, ma'am. Please enjoy yourself. We had a live-in maid who took care of the housework, and took care of me while my dad was at work. Her name was Shinobu. She was the one reason why I was still able to smile. She did everything my mother was supposed to do, and more. She made sure I brushed my teeth, read books to me before bedtime, and doted on me. As for my mother, she was always out having parties and going on lavish holidays with her friends. She didn't feel any responsibility to work or do the chores, or even raise me, and spent her time eating through my father's money.
Nezuko, your dinner's ready. Today I made you your favorite. It's hamburg steak. I prepared some vegetables too, so eat up.
Yay! I love everything you make, but this is the best, Shinobu. Thank you. I'll do my best and eat the veggies. I was lucky that Shinobu loved me as though I were her own daughter. I was lonely, but I wasn't alone. There was no doubt that I was scarred by the lack of attention from my biological mother, and without Shinobu's kindness, I don't know what might have happened to me, but it was easier to endure. I think that I should make it clear that my father wasn't forgiving of my mother's treatment of me, nor was he silently letting it happen. I knew that he was warning her when he could, just not in front of me. He really was a considerate man.
Don't you think you should spend more time with Nezuko, rather than going on shopping sprees with your friends?
Why does it matter? She doesn't need me. She's got Shinobu with her all the time. I want to go out and have fun. I'm not interested in playing house and raising children. Why should I do something beneath me? That's what the maid is for.
They often had arguments like this, no matter how delicately my dad tried to ease into the conversation. I knew that my dad always chose to speak to my mother when I had gone to sleep so that I wouldn't have to see them arguing. But of course, I was still a child, and I couldn't help but worry and sneak downstairs to listen to what they were saying. As you can see, their relationship wasn't in the best shape either. My mother had no respect for my dad, so there was no way she would listen to him. But she didn't want to lose the luxurious lifestyle she had as a benefit of his money, so she never brought up divorce. Whenever they argued, she would avoid the issue by running away from home for a few days before coming back as though nothing had happened. I guess my father also seemed to think that it was better for me in the long run if they didn't divorce, or must have hoped that my mother's attitude would improve if she grew out of playing around. It would be 100 times better if she wasn't here. I don't want a mom like her. Living with her had become a source of stress for me. One day, I heard my parents arguing again and was watching them from behind the couch when something unexpected happened.
Look at this! I've had a private detective follow you for a few weeks now. I know that you've been having an affair. I want a divorce. I can't let Nezuko grow up in the same house as an immoral woman like you.
At the time, I didn't understand what was going on, but I found out years later that my mother had been cheating on my dad. He had gathered enough evidence to win a court case and announced that he wanted a divorce. My mother was clearly in the weaker position, and she knew it, so she became defiant and demanded something shocking.
Fine, I'll give you a divorce. I was getting sick of you lecturing me every time we see each other anyway. In return, I want custody of Nezuko. I'm her mother, you can't deny me that. I'm going to take care of her.
Even as a child, I knew that she wasn't being serious. I knew too well just how irresponsible and selfish she was, but I didn't understand why she would suddenly say something like that. Why would she suddenly pretend that she cared about me? Again, I only understood her motives years later. When I became a teenager, I realized that she must have been thinking that if she took custody of me, she would be able to receive payments of child support from my dad. And knowing my dad and how much he really did love me, he wouldn't have denied me a single cent. He would have handed over any amount demanded of him, even more so if he was told that it would be used on my education. He only wanted the best for me. Moreover, my mother had given birth to me when she was still 23 and was only just turning 30 that year. On the other hand, my dad was already hitting 52. They had gotten married with quite an age gap between them, and to top it off, my dad had been suffering from heart disease ever since they started dating. He didn't know how long he had left to live, and he had already been warned by his doctors that any day could be his last. If that happened, all of his wealth, all of his properties and belongings would be left to me, his only daughter. My mother knew all of that and demanded custody of me, knowing that one day I would inherit everything he had. She must have thought that if she had control over me, she would be able to take all of that wealth for herself. I wasn't a daughter to her. I was just a tool she could use to get access to my father's wealth. Let me get back to explaining what happened after my mother demanded custody of me. I had been watching them argue from behind the couch and thought I had been hidden, but I must have moved closer towards them as I listened, because my dad suddenly caught sight of me and our eyes met.
Nezuko, were you listening? I'm sorry, I thought you were asleep.
My dad was panicking over being seen arguing, but my mother seemed to think that it was perfect timing, because she came over to where I was crouched down with a smile on her face. It was an expression she had never shown me, and it only provoked fear inside me to see her that way.
Nezuko, don't you want to live with me? It'll be fun. It'll be just the two of us, and I'll let you do whatever you want. You don't like being told what to do by your dad, do you? Would you like that?
She must have thought that she would win the custody battle if she managed to get me to say that I wanted to live with her. But unfortunately for her, I hated the idea of being alone with her. No, I don't wanna! I wanna live with Dad! I don't like you! At the time, I didn't understand why she agreed to the divorce and why she was saying that she wanted to live with me. But I understood that it meant that if I stayed with my dad, I would be freed of my mother. I knew that if I went with my mother, I would probably never see my dad ever again. My gut feeling screamed at me to reject my mother's offers and pleas. I was desperate and clung to my dad. He respected my decision and insisted that my mother did so too.
That's what Nezuko says. She doesn't want to live with you. Look at her. If she's rejecting you this much, then you should accept it and give up on taking this to court.
That's ridiculous. Why would she choose you over me? You're never here. You must have blinded her with your money.
Nezuko doesn't want you here. The only one that's blinded by my money is you! You'll only hurt her more if you try to pressure her. I won't demand compensation from you for all the affairs you had. So hurry up and get out of my house!
Like that, my mother was finally kicked out of the house. I had waited for years for the nightmare to come to an end, but now it was over. I couldn't help but think that I was having a dream. Everything changed after my mother left. Well, my dad was still busy, but I didn't have to hear him arguing with my mother, and that was enough to relieve the stress that had accumulated with every argument they had. My dad started sending me to have all sorts of lessons, including dance, so that I wouldn't feel lonely. Thanks to that, I was able to make friends outside of school, had more confidence, and was able to enjoy hobbies for myself, rather than to prove something to my mother. I was able to forget about my mother and even decided to think that I never had a mother to begin with. It was easier to explain that way and saved me from having to dredge up horrible memories of the time we had spent in the same house. Either way, she had never been a motherly person, so it wasn't difficult.
It was a good thing I divorced your mother. If she had stayed any longer, it might have had a much more permanent effect on you. I'm sorry I didn't divorce her sooner. I was mistaken in thinking that she would change, or that you would be worse off if we divorced while you were still young.
Let's forget about her, Dad. You couldn't have known what was best until after the fact. I know that you were thinking about me. The only parent I need is for you, and Shinobu. She was much more of a mother to me than Mom ever was. I'm really happy. I thought I would never have to see my mother ever again, but 10 years later, trouble was able to rain down on my peaceful life. Sorry, I'm in the library studying, so I can't answer the phone right now. Is something wrong?
I'm sorry to disturb you when you're working so hard. I thought I should tell you that I just got a phone call from your mother.
Mother? You mean the woman that left the house 10 years ago? Shinobu, she's not my mother anymore.
Yes, that lady. She called asking for you.
What did she want? Was she asking for money? You can ignore her, you know. You don't have any obligation to follow her orders. If anything, go ahead and call the police on her. I don't want anything to do with her.
Well, I'm not sure, but it seems like she wasn't interested in money.
Then what did she say? I don't think she wants to have dinner to catch up with me. I doubt she even remembers how old I am.
I don't know the details, but she mentioned that she was in the hospital.
She said that she was in a hospital? Maybe it's the hospital bills.
Yes, I don't know about the bills, but she wanted me to tell you that she wants to see you. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but you're old enough to make your own decisions.
I understand. Thank you, Shinobu. After all these years, Shinobu was still working as a live-in maid, and when I got this message from her, I could tell that she was worried. Neither of us could predict what my mother might demand. I didn't want my mother to make a fuss, so I decided to go see her and find out what she wanted. I headed to the hospital where she was being treated. When I reached her hospital room, I found my mother lying back in bed, her eyes droopy and her cheeks hollow.
Nezuko, you came! I'm so happy to see you. You've grown so much.
I was shocked. She had changed a lot in 10 years. She was much thinner and she had no color in her face. Even her attitude and the way she spoke to me was completely different to how she used to treat me. It was almost as though she was a mother meeting her long-lost daughter for the first time. I could see that she was close to tears, but I had no such emotion. I wasn't happy to see her, nor was I especially worried about her condition. I was just as cold towards her as she used to be towards me. So, why did you call for me? What do you want? I'm busy, so let's get this over and done with.
Please, don't be so cold. I'm your mother and I'm ill. You could be a bit kinder.
I don't remember you being kind to me when I was a child, and as far as I'm concerned, you're not my mother. I have no reason to be kind to you. What do you want?
The truth is, my kidney's in a bad condition. The doctors say that the only way to treat it is to have a transplant.
It was a much more problematic situation than I expected. She didn't want money, but she wanted something even more dear. The first step to having a kidney transplant was to find a matching donor. The donor would need to have a matching blood type, compatible antigens, and there would have to be a test to confirm whether the donated kidney would be accepted by the patient's immune system. According to the doctors, it was apparently close to impossible to find a perfect match, even between siblings, but the risk of rejection could be significantly decreased if the donor was a blood relation. In other words, there was no chance for her she continued waiting for a match from a complete stranger, so she was demanding that I hand over one of my kidneys. Of course, my first reaction was to say no, leave the hospital and never look back.
When I found out about my kidneys and heard that I could die, I thought about my life. I thought about the time I spent living with you and your dad, and I finally realized just how horrible I've been to you. You're absolutely right. I don't have the right to call myself your mother, but I want the chance to make it up to you. Please forgive me, I'm begging you.
She cried and pleaded with me. She was completely different to the self-centered and self-absorbed woman I had known her to be. It was difficult to tell because she was sat up in bed, but I could tell that I had outgrown her. I was much taller and she seemed so much smaller than I remembered her to be. I suddenly felt guilty for being so stubborn towards her when she was in such a weakened state, and began to pity her. I decided that I would at least take the test to see if my kidney would be a match and to see if I was healthy enough to be a donor. Then, when the results came back, I was told that I was the best match available for my mother.
No matter what you say, this shows that we're mother and daughter. Nezuko, if you do this for me, I'll be saved. My kidneys are failing. I don't have a lot of time. Please, Nezuko, I don't want to die.
Let me think about it. I get that you're worried, but the donor has to undergo surgery as well. There are a lot of risks I'll have to consider. I can't decide right away. I'll be back tomorrow. After leaving my mother's room, I was walking down the hospital corridors when I remembered that Shinobu was waiting for me at home. I hadn't told her that I decided to go see my mother, and I probably made her worry. I rushed to get my phone out of my bag. I already had a notification telling me I had a message from her.
Nezuko, are you okay? I haven't heard from you since I messaged you this morning.
I'm okay. I'm sorry. I came to see her in the hospital. It turns out she has something wrong with her kidneys. She says that she needs a donor transplant.
That sounds troublesome.
I guess the only member of family the doctors could get a hold of was me. They say that there's a better chance her body will accept the donated kidney if it's from me. I had some tests done and they show that I'm a good match.
Nezuko, are you still wondering what to do?
Yeah, I didn't feel like going home, so I was walking around the hospital thinking. That's why I didn't get back to you sooner. I didn't mean to make you worry.
You don't have to apologize to me. I'll always be waiting here. If you don't feel like having the transplant, then you don't have to. You're not obliged to take the risk for her, no matter how small they may be. You certainly don't have to feel like you owe her anything. Minako could always choose to live on dialysis.
Thank you, Shinobu, but I finally made up my mind. I'm going to donate my kidney.
Are you sure? It might be horrible for me to say this, but she doesn't deserve your generosity.
Are you worried about me?
Of course I am. I've been with you ever since you were a little girl. I don't want you to get hurt, and I especially don't want to see you hurt by your own mother again.
Thank you, Shinobu. I'm really glad that you're still with me. It makes dealing with her a lot easier, but I've already decided. I'll let Dad know later. Despite not wanting to consider her my mother, she was still the person that gave birth to me. I wouldn't have been born without her. She was already on dialysis, but considering her fragile condition, I felt bad just thinking about how she would be stuck in the hospital until the day she died. If I gave her my kidney, she could have had the chance to get better and leave the hospital. The next day, I made my way to the hospital to tell my mother that I had agreed to the kidney transplant and that I would donate my kidney. It might have been enough to tell her over the phone, but I thought that it would be a good chance to talk to her and get to know her again. I took some flowers that I bought from a florist I found on my way to the hospital. I was about to enter my mother's hospital room when I heard an unfamiliar voice. It was a man.
Are you sure it's gonna be okay? What if she realizes you're bluffing?
I'll be fine. She's grown up exactly like her father. She's a goody two-shoes that jumped at the chance to help people. She doesn't suspect a single thing.
I could hear my mother talking and realized that she was speaking in the tone of a voice that I was so familiar with. I stopped myself from opening the door any further and took a look at who was inside. I saw that the man with her was dressed in flashy clothing and looked much younger than her.
After I get her kidney and get better, I'm going to make an excuse to move in with her. She won't be able to say no to me. I'm her sickly mother. I just have to pretend that I need more time to recover from the surgery.
You were saying it's an enormous house, right? On private land? Sounds great to me!
There's plenty of money, too. Enough to do whatever we want for the rest of our lives. She'll feel so bad that I'm close to dying, she'll practically throw it at me.
Are you sure it'll be that easy? You promised me that I would be living the easy life.
What are you so worried about? There's more than enough money for that. When the time is right, I'll take everything she's inherited and we can go and live together abroad. Where do you want to go? We can go anywhere we like. Oh, I can't wait.
My mother and the man that seemed to be her boyfriend were talking about their future plans, but those future plans were based on the idea that they would be taking my money. The money I inherited from my dad. I dropped the bouquet I had held in my hands. From the noise, they both finally realized that I was standing outside the door looking in. They had been so immersed in their dreams, they hadn't noticed that the door was partially open.
Nezuko, I don't know what you heard, but I didn't mean any of that. I
didn't care to listen to the rest of her excuses and left the hospital with tears streaming down my cheeks. I had been deceived.
Nezuko, you're just confused. You have to believe me. I didn't mean any of that. Please just answer my messages. I need to explain. Give me a chance.
Really? I'm confused? Go ahead and make as many excuses as you want. I know what I heard. I know that you're after Dad's money. Why am I so surprised? I should have known that that's what you were after. I heard the part about how you were going to make your way into my home, faking that you needed to recover. I also heard the part about stealing all of my money and disappearing abroad. If you really think I'm confused, then please, do explain.
I was just joking about all of that. Why are you so serious? You've got to laugh a little.
You may not have cared to remember, but I'm already 17. You can't trick me so easily. You never cared about me when I was little. I shouldn't have thought that you would change so easily.
Nezuko, let's talk about this. You're just being emotional.
No, thank you. I'm going to trust my instincts. I don't want to talk with you anymore. Until I reached your hospital room today, I thought that you deserved a second chance and planned on giving you my kidney. But I think not. I'm not giving you my kidney or anything that Dad left for me. I can't trust you. I don't ever want to see you ever again. If Dad was still alive, I'm sure he would agree with me. Goodbye. My dad had passed away from a heart attack the previous year. Everything he had owned, the house, properties, company, and his money had been left to me in his will. In the months leading up to his death, he had already been preparing for his death, including his own funeral, and had made arrangements to ensure that I would receive everything he had. I was only 17, but already had great wealth at my fingertips. I knew from my childhood with my mother that people would go crazy for money and that I could be targeted by other people who wanted to live rich. But my father had also learned firsthand what money did to people, and had even written a letter expressing regret that I would be left by myself, and to make clear how he wanted the money to be handled. First of all, he wanted the tax accountant he had been working with for years to manage the properties and the revenue they produced. From the profits, the tax accountant would transfer the necessary amount Shinobu had generously agreed to become my guardian until I became an adult, and she was responsible for confirming the amount transferred and dividing it between money needed for groceries, clothing, fees for college, and whatever else. Every month I received pocket money, but that was it. That was the system my dad had created to ensure people like my mom didn't take advantage of my new wealth. I had no part in handling any of the money that my dad had left for me until I graduated college. In other words, I would actually have all that wealth at my command when I became 23, but not any sooner. My mother must have heard about my dad's death from someone, somewhere, and thought it was her chance to pounce. She used her illness as an excuse to make me feel sorry for her, in the hope that she would be able to steal my dad's wealth from me, but I guess it never occurred to her that steps had already been taken to prevent that. Even I had thought that it was possible that she might be planning something like that, but I wanted to trust her. I guess I really did take after my dad. I hoped that it was possible she could change, but she didn't even hesitate before stabbing me in the back. And it looked like she didn't want to give up that easily either. Even after I had messaged my farewell, she came to my house to beg for me to listen to her. She was supposed to be in weak condition, and I had heard directly from the doctors that it was difficult for her to even leave the hospital. So her persistence showed me just how desperate she was.
Please, I just need a transplant. I won't ask you for any money. If you just give me a chance to live for a little longer, I won't bother you anymore. I'll never come near you ever again. Please, Nezuko, I'm your mother.
She was begging and pleading again, with tears actually flowing this time. But I knew that behind her act there was a gold digger just waiting for the right time to get close to me, who only saw money when she looked at me. I was such an idiot to trust you the first time. I can't believe I actually tried to donate part of my body to save you. It's amazing that you think that I would say yes just because you came all the way here to ask me.
I told you I don't need the money anymore. Please, just save me. I need a kidney. Just give me one more chance. Nezuko, you can't do this to me.
Enjoy your life on dialysis. I already gave you one chance when I visited you at the hospital, but you blew it. You only have yourself to blame. I said goodbye once more and shut the door in her face. She came several times after that, but each time would call the police and I was sent away. Then she finally stopped coming. She must have really hit her body's limit and was probably stuck in her hospital bed, attached to a dialysis machine. I was relieved that I was no longer bothered by her, but I was forgetting that there was one more person I should have been worried about.
Excuse me, you're Minako's daughter, right? I'm her fiancé. Do you remember me? We met at the hospital.
Yeah, I remember you conspiring with my biological mother about stealing my money. What do you want? The man who was with my mother when I overheard their conversation about using my dad's mother for their holiday had turned up on my doorstep. I heard from that woman that they were dating, but I never heard that they were engaged. I didn't understand why he was suddenly calling himself her fiancé, but I knew that it couldn't be anything good. There could only be one reason why he was here.
Minako had promised me that I would become rich one day. I even resigned my job because I believed her.
Really? I'm so sorry to hear that. You should hurry up and find a job while you still can. I'm sure you'll find something, but you won't find it here.
Thing is, I was thinking you could give me some money. I mean, it was your mom that caused me trouble. It was her fault I resigned from my job because she told me I would be rich.
What did you say?
You're the one that rejected Minako and said you weren't gonna give her your kidney or your money. In that case, it makes it your fault that I'm not rich yet. I was supposed to live like a celebrity after Minako's transplant. I didn't get what I was promised, so I want compensation. You have plenty of money, so what if you give me some? Minako told me you're rolling in millions of dollars. You could spare a couple $100,000 for me.
It made my head ache just thinking about how that woman had chosen to spend her time with such a shallow man like this after leaving my dad. I was about to respond to his outrageous request when Shinobu appeared from behind me. If looks could kill, I'm sure that Minako's boyfriend would be lying flat on the floor. But instead, Shinobu sent him flying with a punch to his solar plexus.
No!
I was struck dumb by the scene before my eyes. The man was sprawled out on the floor of our entrance, clutching his stomach. It took me a second to realize that Shinobu had actually punched a man.
Money, money, money. That's all any of you ever think about. I've had enough. Leave Nezuko alone, the lot of you. Nezuko lost her father when she was just 16. She's been left all alone in the world, and she doesn't need people like you bothering her for money. Your fiancé betrayed Nezuko and her father, and you plotted with her to take away Nezuko's inheritance. But there isn't a single cent in this house that is free for you to take, so leave and never come back.
I'll make you regret you ever did that!
The man managed to get to his feet and was in a rage, trying to punch Shinobu.
Nezuko, get back!
I was still stunned by what had happened and couldn't move, but Shinobu was fast enough to react to the man's movements. She grabbed the arm that he had flung out to hit her with and used his momentum to throw him over her own shoulder. Once again, Minako's boyfriend was sprawled out on our entrance floor. This time he really was winded and had a hard time raising his head, let alone getting up. Shinobu wasn't of a large build. In fact, she was a very small woman. I didn't know where she hid the strength to toss a man much bigger than her, but thinking back, it was definitely very satisfying. She was always very sweet and gentle towards me, and I'd never seen her so angry, so at the time I was still having difficulty processing what was going on. What's more, the man stopped struggling to get up, and seemed to have stopped moving.
Don't worry, he's not dead. He just lost consciousness. I'll call the police and have them clean this mess up. Nezuko, are you okay?
I'm okay. You protected me. Shinobu, who on earth are you? How did you do all that?
Well, I used to be a wrestler. I'm quite small, so I was in the 120 pounds class, but that experience helped.
A wrestler?
It's no big deal. I had to give up because of an injury, so I didn't leave any good results. I met your father when I was having trouble finding work after my retirement, and he offered me a job in this house. He loved professional wrestling, and it seems he was a fan of mine when I was wrestling.
I never knew any of that. It's the first time anyone's told me how you met.
You were still a baby when I came to work here. Your father asked that I take care of you and also act as your bodyguard when necessary. I made sure to keep up with my training and exercise in case of emergency situations like this.
I was really surprised to hear about a side to Shinobu that I never knew about. It was so surreal to hear from such a small woman. The last few minutes proved that she wasn't joking. She even told me how she was sent out to purge a stalker that I never knew existed. Shinobu, you were my hero. You protecting me from the shadows all this time. Thank you a lot.
It really isn't that big a deal, but I owe your father a lot for giving me a position here while I was still recovering from my injury and having trouble finding work. I plan on spending the rest of my life paying that debt back, and I can't leave you all by yourself either. Please let me continue to protect you from now on too.
Thank you, Shinobu. I'll work hard to make you proud. You're all I have left now. After that, Minako's boyfriend was taken away by the police, and I don't know what happened to him or Minako. My best guess is that she's still on dialysis, living out her final days in the hospital, or has already passed on. She didn't seem like she had long left to live the last time I saw her, but that's none of my business. I don't feel sorry for her dying alone. If that's what she gets, that's what she deserves. The only family I have is my dad and Shinobu. I'm going to spend the money I was left wisely, and make them proud. I owe it to Shinobu to make her happy and give her everything I can to thank her for being a great mother.
Thank you.